This time on KEI Fabrication.
Well, folks, I got the last day that you see it. Beginning section of the battery box. It's going to be hung in the rear, fabricated.
Hide all the women and children. Hide all the women and children. Hide all the women and children. All the grinding's done. Time to clean the garage. Well, folks, I just came back from the scrapyard. So I ran up to the scrapyard. Well, we're up here at the junkyard. Well, we're back in the junkyard.
The next thing on the list is to relocate the battery. This is where the spare tire was, and this thing is super crunchy, real typical victim of New England rust. This cross member was just a sheet metal U-channel turned upside down with a couple of things for the tire to rest on. And my plan is to remove that cross member completely, and then I'm going to put a tubular cross member in, and then I'm going to hang the battery right in this area here. And I'm going to line it up so the battery is in long ways this way, and I was taught that if the plates inside the battery are parallel with the center line of thrust of the vehicle, then if the plates in the battery are this way, the vibration and the hard launches and everything has a potential of the plates shorting out because they move around or they break loose inside the battery. So I'm going to mount it so the long way of the battery is this way. So I'm in the process of removing this cross member. I'm going to try and get the tubular cross member in, and I'm getting short on time today. I'm very thankful that I got the traction bars done, and then I'm just moving on to the next major fabrication thing on the list. Hey folks, one thing Mazda trucks are famous for is the frames rotting out, just like the Toyotas are doing nowadays. Being a boxed frame, anything that gets trapped in here collects moisture and it rots from the inside out, and that's why you usually don't know about your frame being rotted. You can see that some squirrels got in here, and I actually left some pine cones in my frame. So that explains why this one little area is the worst section on the whole frame. It's right back near the rear passenger side spring hanger. So I am going to replate this. You can see that this is paint up here. So I used to fix a lot of these back in the 90s when the 80s frames were rotting out. In the early 2000s, and I came up with a method that when you cut these things open, from the middle up, there was usually paint still on the inside of the frame rail. So I knew that that was structurally still sound. So I had a fabrication shop make me up some L brackets, and I would weld an L bracket on here, and then I would weld an L bracket on here, and I would stitch it all into the top edge of the frame rail, and it would restore the structural integrity of the frame. So this has a doubling plate down here on the spring hanger. I've got an 1/8 inch thick of really solid material here, and then I've got the factory thickness remaining up here high on the frame rail. So I'm going to make a plate that goes in, ties into the spring hanger. I'll stitch it all in. I'm going to use this factory hole to locate my tubular cross member to replace the strength of that spare tire hanger that was part of a cross member. And this little hole here is the pilot hole. It was a wire loom mounting point for the wiring harness, and there's one in the exact same spot on the other side, so it takes away the necessity to measure and all that other stuff. So anyway, it's just behind the rear spring hanger, shock hanger on the passenger side. the battery is going to be mounted. My tubular cross member is right here. My battery is going to be mounted behind it and inboard a little bit, so it'll be centered between the frame rail and the spring and the differential cover. So that'll be where the battery is centrally located, and I can hang my entire battery box structure from that cross member once it's installed. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, get it ready for a new piece of material, and the other side is fine. I think the major issue here was that my furry friends left their pine cones in here, and that collected the moisture and caused the frame to rot out. I've been over this frame from front to back, and this was the only section that was compromised. See, I got a little bit to redo here, and I actually may make the plate go all the way up and tie into the rear shock bracket here. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. Oh, we got the plate made and it's all welded in, and we're prepping for the cross member now. Well folks, I got the beginning section of the battery box. It's going to be hung in the rear, fabricated. I've got a temporary piece of tubing to help position everything so I can weld it, and I'll show you the rear cross member that it's going to be attached to in just a moment. So here's the rear cross member. The rear frame rail is all repaired back here, and the cross member moves all the way across to the other side. It's welded in, and it clears the exhaust, as you can see. And the plan is for the battery box to hang right here. I got it marked. I'm going to have it 3 inches away, so there's 3 inches away from the frame, so there's plenty of room to clear the shackle. And I'm going to bring it over here and mock it up and see how it looks. Alright folks, got the battery box in. I've got a ground stud welded to the chassis here, so the negative cable will go to there. And I've got a big diagonal gusset here out of 1/2x1/2 box tubing to take this cantilever load off. See, I've got the tubing all the way through the frame, and it runs all the way across the back of the truck. I don't know if you can see that or not. And now I got some light in there. So that cross member is 134 wall roll bar tubing, and just some angle iron we picked up from the scrapyard. So I'm going to make a battery hold down here. So there's a strap that'll hold the battery down in the box. I'm trying to make it so whatever it is at the top is easy access, and the battery isn't that difficult to get out. You just kind of skip it out over the shelf and head towards the middle of the truck, and the whole box comes right out with the battery in it. So that's where we're at so far. Well folks, the battery box is finished. I've got the safety switch installed over there, and right now I just reach under and turn it off, but eventually I will have it set up so I can go. If you can see the cabling right here, I'll have a push off lever right here in the back bumper. So when the truck's on the ground, the battery box is level with the bottom of the back bumper. It's actually level with the center of the rear axle center line. So the traction bars are done, shocks are in, lowering blocks are done. So a lot of work done in a couple of days. Had to do a frame repair up here, as I mentioned in some of the previous footage of this video. So right now I am preparing to do an oil change and just give everything a good once over while it's up in the air.
next time on KEI Fabrication.
So I'm going to start cutting the exhaust system apart, and we'll see if I ruin a really good piece of fabrication or come out with something nice in the end.